Okay, getting back to Daniel chapter 12. What's interesting, after the demise, what happens to okay, so the king of the north he's destroyed. Okay, this is the one time that he's not going to come back. But this gives rise to an event that happens at the same time. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. At that time, Michael will stand up. This is the great archangel. It says, the great prince who is standing in behalf of the sons of your people. And there will certainly occur a time of distress such as not been made to occur since there came to be a nation until that time. During that time, your people will escape everyone who is found written in the book. Verse 2. There will be many asleep in the ground who will wake up, good and bad, basically. Resurrection, day of judgment, 1,000-year day of judgment. But God's kingdom comes. It first exercises its power at the time of the destruction of the king of the north, and it probably is by God's kingdom, or Michael and his angels, that the king of the north is destroyed. Time will tell, we'll find out. But basically, they happen at the same time. Daniel chapter 8, verse 23, talks about this king of the north for our day. It says, in the final part of their kingdom, as the transgressors act to a completion, there will stand up a king fierce in countenance and understanding ambiguous sayings. And his power must become mighty, but not by his own power. It says it's like other people fight for him, he gets power, and anyhow, and in a wonderful way, he will cause ruin. And it, the word wonderful is more like astonishing, more of a definition of astonishing than that. It's like, whoa, what, you know. So anyhow, but there's some things, some characteristics about him. For instance, and he will certainly prove as successful. He will act effectively. He will bring mighty ones to ruin, and also people made up of the holy ones. This is persecution. This is not just about literal Hebrews or Jews, it's spiritual ones too. And according to his insight, he will certainly cause deception to succeed in his hand. And in his heart, he will put on great errors, and during a freedom from care, he will bring many to ruin. And against the prince of princes, he will stand up, but it will be without hand that he will be broken, as probably the biggest indicator that he's going to be broken by Michael and his angels. That's the beginning of God's kingdom, my friends. The interesting thing, Daniel chapter 12, there's a messenger talking to another messenger in Daniel's vision here. And he's wondering, when does this happen? Okay, he's talking about this vision Daniel had, like in chapter 11. Chapter 12, verse 9. He went to say, go, Daniel, because the words are made secret and sealed up to the time of the end. Many will cleanse themselves and whiten themselves and be refined, and the wicked ones will certainly act wickedly. And no ones at all will understand, but the ones having insight will understand. And this summarizes a lot of the end of Daniel chapter 11. So, if Sinwar is the king of the north of our time, he's going to meet his demise. But before that, some things happen, which isn't good. Well, there's a reason for it. Daniel chapter 12 and the end of verse 7. Basically, as soon as there is a finishing of the dashing of the power of the holy people to pieces, all these will come to the finish. That's an important line. But it talks about the dashing of the holy people to pieces. What's with that? There's going to be persecution. Daniel chapter 11, verse 35 says there's a reason for that. Basically, God's people, we're talking about literal and symbolic, their ways have been dirtied. They need to cleanse their worship. Revelation is talking about putting on those white robes. But the thing is, they've been inspected and thrown to the nations in Revelation chapter 11. That's why there's that persecution. But biggest indicator of fine-tuning things of our point in time, we might be living in the most traumatic time of human history just before the coming of God's kingdom. Well, I should say when God's kingdom first arrives, it's the greatest tribulation then. Because first there's the cleansing of God's people, then after that there's the cleansing of the nations. And that gets into a whole other ball of wax. But right now what I'm going to do is, because we've covered a lot of things, I say, well, God's kingdom's not going to come to the earth. Well, okay, let me cover this real fast. Daniel chapter 2, around verse 44, and so talks about God's kingdom coming to the earth, filling the whole earth, but it conquers all the other nations. Okay, that's basically what Daniel is talking about. It's woven throughout Daniel. That is the incoming kingdom of God. And Matthew chapter 6, verse 9 and 10, Christ taught his disciples to pray in that prayer, God's kingdom to come. Revelation chapter 21, first 4 verses, God's kingdom it comes. New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven, it says, down out of heaven. Death is done away with. Other blessings happen for the earth. Jesus in John chapter 5, verse 28, 29, also basically repeats Daniel 12, verse 1, the resurrection of the good and the bad. The resurrection. Okay, so that brings up a lot of questions in people's minds. If someone's good and goes to heaven, and I was taught, people are bad, they go to hell. Then what in the world is the resurrection? I mean, if you resurrected someone that was good, isn't that if you brought them to earth, is that bad? And if you brought someone that was in hell for their wickedness and brought them up, what's that? I'm going to cover that in the next couple episodes. Okay, the resurrection of the good and bad. But for right now, I'm going to look at how Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, could be the king of the north. But we'll see. If he ends up not being the king of the north, at least what it does is it gets people ready and they can see some of the attributes of the king of the north and some of the things that have to take place in Daniel before that time of the end. That end is the end of Gentile rule. So after that, it is God's kingdom that rules after that. So